flip on over, and we're going to go into CNS companies and hear from Eric.
All right. Well, thanks, Brad. I'll tell you, I've been on Workspot, I don't know, a little over a year now. I've had such a great experience. Like you said, we walked in this morning, you met my IT team. Now, CNS right now, we're 51 years old. We got 21 locations around the United States, right? We got 550 employees. How many people did you meet this morning?
I met, what, four or five guys, right?
Four.
Yeah.
You met 4 people that support 550.
Yeah.
Right. So
and they were happy, by the way.
This is where when you talk to the IT people, when you talk to the people that are on the webinar today, they're probably in the same boat. They probably are supporting more people with fewer support people these days. And that's where most people that I've talked to have gone, right? When I used to talk with people, they would say, oh, we're 1 to 30, 1 to 40. The really high end people were 1 to 80. We're now at 1 to 100. We're 1 to 100 right now.
Right. There aren't many overstaffed IT departments in the AE world.
That's not happening right now. So if you look at it, we're no different. We're a mid-sized company. I'd call us kind of mid-sized. We aren't a large company. We do about $120 million in business. Last year we were ENR 153, and so we are a full service company. Everything from environmental scientists to planners into the design, which AEC firms, most of them into design, either architectural or engineering, and most of us do some form of construction, but we actually have a construction company, and then we have a software company on top of that. If you look at the slide, you see QWare down the bottom. It's not named after me, by the way. It's not named after me, but we do have a software company, so we have a lot of different needs within the organization. So our experience over the years, we've pushed the limits, right? We were one of the first companies to move into Panzura, and because we needed to collaborate. I came out of the design world. I started here in 1988. Some of the people on your webinar weren't even born then, I don't think. But 1988, I started here as a drafter. And so when I moved into IT and eventually into the IT management and CIO role, the one thing I said was I was going to make a great experience for everybody, wherever they sat. Now, it started out saying, I want a great experience for everybody sitting in an office, because through the early 2000s, when I was falling into that role, that's where people sat, was in an office.
Yeah, they all drove in.
So, So Panzura allowed us to do that, right? We deployed Panzura early on, very early in 2013, we deployed Panzura. We got it up and running. It's been really good. But what we have seen is 2 things, Brad. There's been 2 things that have happened since those days in 2013. So we're only talking 6, 7 years removed from this. People want to work from home. That is now a thing. People, engineering firms now want to work from home. It used to be a rare occurrence. Now it's pretty regular. The other thing is this expansion model that we've gone through. So in the past, because you needed MPLS, because you needed a riverbed in place or something like that, everybody went to the office. Well, what defined an office, right? Well, we went out, we found a place that we could rent, a lease, build, whatever, and then we'd build up a full stack of stuff in there. And we would have we got this server room and it's whirring and whizzing in the background, and you can hear it all the way down the hallway. And you got to keep it cool, and you got to have redundant power and all that fun stuff. The model today is to walk into a WeWork or a Regus or something like that and say, I want those 2 rooms. That's it.
You get power, you get networks.
You get power, you get internet, and you have a receptionist down the hall that'll answer the call for you and forward a call to you, right? And so we're like, well, how do we do this? We can't put a Panzura in there because we can't stand up a whole rack. If we stand up a whole rack, they're going to throw us out because the noise is going to be incredible. And there's only 2 people. Why would I put $175,000 into building a rack with a domain controller, Panzura storage, email, whatever you got, phone system? We can't do this anymore. What do we do? How do we take on those people? So a number of years ago, we started looking at virtual desktops. Now, we tried virtual desktops in the office. It was hard, right? So we had people, we had a full stack. We got servers. We got stuff going on where we're building out these virtual desktops.
I think that's our first
here, huh? So, funny thing, right? So Autodesk University, which just wrapped up last week. I was at Autodesk University last year. I was talking with you, and I'm looking around the hall, right? The vendor hall. There's 6,000 people in the vendor hall, and they're all walking by. And I looked at you, Brad, and I said, you know what? I'm looking around. There's only two types of people in this room. There's people who have attempted virtual desktops and those who haven't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Just
That's
like
it.
our polling question earlier.
That's it. When you look, in the small amount have done it successfully. 10% successfully. 45% have not attempted it. 45% have attempted it with limited success.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm looking at you going, let's figure out what are the questions that we need to answer, right? So here's what we've got. Go to the next slide here, and you'll see most people who have deployed virtual desktops, the end users, this is the look on their face, right? Kind of dead eyes, and they're like, the latency is too much. I click on the button and it's not good. Or what the CAD experience, I try to drag the line or I try to swing the model and it's blipping all the way around, and it just isn't doing it for me. Meanwhile, I've got two guys sitting down in my department out of the four. They're sitting down there, and one of them's trying to manage a virtual desktop stack, right? Okay, what do we have to do to make it better? And he would work for days and days, and he'd spend 100 hours, and he would make it kind of better for one or two things. And then I've got my desktop support guys going, holy crap, I don't know anything about how to support this because it sits on a server and not in a box. I'm like, well, how do you make it better? How do you make the stuff better? And they're like, I don't know. And so what I've got my users, but then I've got my VDI administrators, right? Whether it's the guy that's taking care of VMware or Citrix or whatever, and they're just getting frustrated because they're getting all these help desk calls. They don't want help desk calls from end users saying AutoCAD is slow or MicroStation is slow. They want to work on servers. That's what they do. And now it's about a performance thing. And they're looking at it going, I can't figure out what's going on, right? So now we start to deploy Workspot. We were in virtual desktops. We went, you can read the quote yourself.
This is another thing you said to me, I think, when we were at Autodesk University, and that's why I quoted it, because that's what you said.
With Workspot, we went from okay to awesome. We had an okay VDI experience, right? We just couldn't do CAD. We couldn't do the high end stuff. People could log in from outside and do a timesheet. They could log in and they could look at Word documents if they wanted to, and they could pull maybe a PowerPoint and kind of work together in a presentation. But the CAD folks, who are the people who sit and stare at that computer screen 8 hours a day, they were complaining. They were saying, man, this is horrible. And so we went to Workspot and we got off of our VDI solution. Again, we tried Citrix, we tried VMware, we put all kinds of money towards it. Like you said, CapEx at the front, right? And we had a guy who was probably dedicated 50% of his time to trying to figure out how to make VDI work better. That's all he did for half of his time. Workspot, put it in place. We go from okay to awesome. And here's what we got today, right? The users who are using it are happy. We just were downstairs talking with my team, and Raj, he's my main guy for supporting the users when it comes to Workspot. He talked about one of our users who's remote, who's sitting someplace where there are no servers, and she logs in. She used to remote into a physical box because the virtual desktop wasn't working. So she remoted into a physical box using PCO IP technology and all that fun stuff that's out there from Teradici. And what did Raj say? Once a week, he was taking a help desk call from her about performance, once or twice a week. And then we moved her to Workspot, GPU. And how many times does he get a call? Never. He says, I don't get calls anymore. And that's what we want. And so we look at the administrators, they're on vacation.
We found that consistent across our customers, that very, very story, that whatever they had before, whatever it was, and it's been a myriad of attempts to providing that experience, that their help desk call ratio has dropped crazy through the floor, right? So when you're connecting in from home or the cafe or work or wherever you are, and you're connecting into your Workspot workstation, you're about 20 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds away. Your workstation's always there. Now, one thing, half of the folks maybe didn't try VDI. One thing you should realize when you do VDI is just like when you go from a workstation, you're speccing a workstation for that person, right? When you start VDI, you're actually building server infrastructure to attempt to behave like a workstation. And you're trying to guess. You go, I should build this out with the right capacity to support 25 users. Well, at first you have 5 users on there and they go, yay. And then you put 35 users on there and they go, boo, right? So you can never actually have it tuned properly, because when would you ever have exactly 25? because when you build it, it should last you 3 years. And that's the problem with VDI infrastructure, with legacy VDI, is you can never tune it right. So what happens with Workspot when you actually provide a workstation to a user, and you're going to show this now, right?
Yeah.
Is that it is full on dedicated resources and it's linear. You got 10 more users, you get 10 more chunks of resource out of Azure. No one's sharing anything, right? They get their own GPU, storage, and so forth. And so you're going to get linear experience. It isn't like in the morning when I come in early, my experience is great, and then at noon it's horrible when everyone's here. No, it's super linear as we go forward. And so you can lay it out kind of like this. This is sort of roughly how you guys are looking.
This is where we are. I mean, we've got in our offices, we've got workstations, we've got Panzera outside of our offices, and we now are expanding, right? We've got offices now in Cincinnati, we've got offices in Philadelphia. No infrastructure. And we can grow as needed. And we say, here's your Workspot. And they're going, I've got people now who sit in offices and then go, and they're like, can I just use Workspot all the time? It's like, yes, you can, right? That's what we would rather you do as you travel around the country. Because again, there's
and they're experiencing the same performance as if they were working inside the office.
Absolutely.
From remote places that don't have the IT infrastructure.
And we've got,
it's remarkable.
We've got our highest end graphic users, right? We talked today about a guy named Ryan. Ryan is our guy that he does all, he's got the 3ds Max, he's got the Lumion, he's got all the stuff for doing the 3-dimensional renderings and the lifelike stuff. Where does he like to work? He likes to work on Workspot at home, in the office. He can work wherever he wants. We've never had that before because he had to be on a box that had an 8 to 12 gig video card. And now we've got that.
Yeah.
We've got it virtually.
And you know what's interesting, when you're working in Workspot, what's faster and better performance is opening files. You're on a multi-gig network when you're going across, inside of Azure to open that file up, right?
Yeah.
And so file open times and close times, saving times is actually a fraction of that, right?
Yeah. And
so I think what we should do is, we can talk about the configuration that when you're running that workstation like Ryan's running up there, you get a dedicated NVIDIA Tesla M60 for that person, 6 virtual CPUs, a bunch of memory, a bunch of disk space, and so forth. And like I said, the network speeds are kind of crazy. Whenever you go up inside your desktop, you just do a speed test, and upload and download speeds. It's like multi-gig. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so what we want to do now is then vector off and actually do the live demo. All right. So let me change presenter over to Eric, who has his laptop right here, and then right, here we go. Then you can show a live demo here.
Yeah. So here I am. I mean, this is within Workspot. This is a Workspot workstation. You can see the specs over here, and basically this is running out of the Azure North Central region. So we're in Syracuse, New York. Yeah. This is running out of the Chicago area, wherever Microsoft has their data center out there. And you can see I don't want to embarrass myself. I have not done CAD in a lot of years. I started out in CAD in the 80s. Okay.
You're not designing buildings all day.
I'm not designing buildings, but I can tell you that as I work through this, and you're looking at my desktop, that as I click and as I do stuff and as I pan around, right? If I grab and I start to pan around, everything here is just in real time.
Oh, what's good? It's like the webcam picks up your mouse, and then they can see the screen, right? And it's coming through GoToWebinar and so forth, right? There'll be a slight delay because of that.
Smooth,
but it's smooth.
But it's smooth, and I've got, I can shade it out, and you can see I've got my triangulated irregular network. My tin is here for those of you who are working on the civil side. You've had a lot of customers that have shown the BIM side, the Revit side, and stuff like that. I don't know how many people have showed the civil side, but this civil stuff is also very CPU, GPU intense, right? And so we are seeing the same stuff. Here's the live stuff. In
my experience, Civil 3D is one of the more difficult applications to support.
And as I wrap this around, I mean, it looks like a television show, man. It is not jumpy. I don't know what it looks like going through GoToWebinar, but I mean, this deal here, it just absolutely does exactly what I would expect it to do, as what I would expected it to do when I was a CAD operator, and you can see the reflections and stuff like that. So again, I'm not going to embarrass myself and say, look at what I can do on CAD. That's not why I'm here, because I'm more of an administrator, and I want to show you the administrator console for those who are here, and what it means to us, because setting up users in VMware used to be very intense, right? So you have to cordon off certain stuff. You figure out who's got what, and as you try to troubleshoot, listen, we all got excited every year when NVIDIA came out with a new grid card, and then all of a sudden you realize you got last year's grid card and you're feeling bad about it yourself, like you're not doing the best for your company. And so here we are. This is what the Workspot interface looks like, right? So you kind of go into the control module. You've got this desk or dashboard. It shows you how people are getting in. And then you've got your resources, and you set up pools, and you set up the pools however you want. You can have pools of different images and things like that, however you want to set it up. And if I go into this, you can see who my GPU users are and who's connected, who's not connected. And if I go into, here's my power. So power doesn't have as much RAM. It doesn't have the video capabilities of the GPU, but I can tell you that most of my Civil 3D users, this is what they're using.
Well, this question comes up a lot. It's like, what are the choices that I have in desktops and workstations, and how do I pick them and choose them? So it sounds like it's based on maybe application and use case. Yeah.
So it's what are you doing? What are you going to need? So these powered desktops, which are less expensive, they rival anything that we have in house. And if I want to, if I have a workstation sitting here, if I want to assign that to somebody, I just go over and I go to assign VM, and I can select through Active Directory, and I select my domain, and I can put a username in there, and I can search, and I can get a username, and I can just assign someone to a desktop. Now, sometimes depending on my computer, I'm connected wirelessly, by the way. I am not connected. Wireless? Yeah, the whole thing that I'm doing is wireless right now, and so I'm going wireless into my network.
And is that how people are working at home?
That's how people usually work at home, and so, but this is how you go in. The name hasn't popped up. Maybe I typed it in right. But anyway, name pops up, and there's an assign button. And I click the assign button, and then I tell them, you got your desktop. They go in, and then they've got the experience at that point. Perfect. I mean, it's just that simple. And then I can go in, I can look at reports and how many users I've got, and I can set up security policies, which includes geofencing. It includes everything from network policies to similar firewall policies. What website I can whitelist websites, I can blacklist websites, and I can set up applications, right? So I can push out specific applications, and I can go into my users, and I can see where they've logged in from and where they're logging, what they're logging into, and I can get a report of where they've been. So that is how easy it is to actually manage this. If I have a new image that I wanted to apply to a machine, I can apply an image. And you guys take it out of our hands. I call support, say, here's my image. Okay, let me apply it. Boom, and it's done.
Then it's up in raw storage. Yeah, and then the architecture will show where all that stuff fits together. So this is good because what you just saw here was essentially not only the Workspot client and the end user experience, but the admin experience, and that is a browser-based experience. So as we talked about before, rather than getting an Azure admin UI and an Azure bill associated with these desktops and workstations, you get the Workspot browser-based experience, which is an abstraction layer above all the little resources that Azure has to offer. And so you can also think of this as evergreen in a sense, like you were talking about. I don't have to worry about buying a new GPU every year, right?
Right.
Azure does all that. And you just get to actually decide which ones you sit on top of and which ones you deploy to which users and for which use cases. So you got folks that are CPU intensive, you get a power desktop. You got folks that are Lumion and others that are just GPU intensive, you get them a workstation. Those are the terms we use, desktop, workstation, for GPU or non, and so forth. And then you launch them out there. And then when they're actually out there working in the world, whether it's at home or desk or at the coffee shop or at the job site or whatever, people ask us a lot of time, okay, so what sort of network speed do you use, right? And so you can use a hotspot, as we were doing earlier today. You can use wireless, you can click into wire. When you think about when you're rotating the model around and what's happening, right? Essentially that's running in Azure. It's using RDP 10.x protocol, which is using H.264 encoding, which is essentially compressing the screen, sending it down, uncompressing and displaying. And since you're only 15 to 20 milliseconds away, the mouse and keyboard clicks going up are instantaneous, and then the compression and the sending the things back are so fast it feels like it's running local. Right? That's what we're finding. And typically you'll find 1, 2, 3, 4 megabits per second is what you'll need if the thing is just rotating all over the place, and that'll be a burst of sort of network. Now, most people, when they're working at home or even in a coffee shop or airport, are going to get about that. If you run speed tests, you probably get a lot more, but you'll at least get that. And so that is the working environment to deliver this wonderful experience, right?
Yeah.
Now, so thanks for the live demo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I want to do is change back over to this screen here and go into this next section, which is joint ventures. Now, before we do, I got a polling question here, which is we're going to talk about joint ventures here, okay? And so my first question to you guys is how many joint ventures are you as an organization involved in? Okay. And so, it's like some haven't been involved in them at all yet, maybe, right? And some are just a smattering. And it's funny, I always get folks that are just like, my range is to 30 a year. This is a year.
Mhm.
And a lot of folks, or several folks come back in each webinar and they're doing more than 30 a year. So these guys can really
Sure.
use what we're going to share with
Absolutely.
them today.
And a joint venture doesn't mean necessarily partners. It could be
Just sub-consultants.
It could be a sub-consultant
Yeah, right.
relationship
Exactly.
that you
And
have.
that's very common.
Yeah.
It's very few projects get delivered today only from one corporate entity.
Yeah, and so if you minimize it, you'll see the results here, right? And so a third of the folks are not involved in those. Maybe we should be careful how we define it, though, right? Because I think what you're saying is key.
What we're saying is that sub-consultants.
Yeah.
This is our next topic is going to be how do you deal with people in different companies working on the same project together.
That's good definition of it, right? And so we got half of the folks that are at least doing 1 to 10 of them, of course, and then a bunch, 6% of them are actually doing more than 30. There's always those folks that are just super engaged in this. And so that is what this next section is about, to talk about that.
All right. Well, yeah. So as we got into Workspot, there was one thing that has stuck out for years, right? We got the collaboration between offices. We did it. We did it 7 years ago. Then we started being able to collaborate with people who aren't in an office. Awesome. I got people working at home. Fantastic. How do I collaborate with the engineering firm or the architectural firm or the environmental firm across the street without emailing, listen, I know you folks out there, Info Exchange from New Formal, ProjectWise from Bentley, A360 from Autodesk. Right. Dude, there's so many solutions out there that are kind of doing it. Doing it in real time, next to impossible, right? But ProjectWise, you got to check stuff out. Autodesk 360 works well with Revit. They're just now starting to get it to work with Civil 3D. Info Exchange, there's nothing. It's not a whole lot more than an FTP site. Right, you basically it's got great logging, it does its thing well, but collaborating in real time, that's not really what it's there for. This real-time collaboration with outside entities, for the most part, has been handled either through Autodesk 360 or BIM 360 for Revit, and it's been handled with ProjectWise for anything outside of Revit. And most people don't want to deal with ProjectWise. Maybe they do. I love Bentley. They're a great company, but this ProjectWise thing is kind of a behemoth. If you got to manage that, now you've got another person on it. So I said, is there a way we can do it?
For all of your applications.
For all applications, everything.
Across multiple subcontractors, I guess, right?
So we're doing it, Brad.
Yeah.
We have used Workspot to dig in and say, can we work together? And the reality is, because of how Workspot is positioned, where you guys are in Azure, and the fact that you guys are hosting the desktop, we're hosting the data. I am currently in the middle of some very large collaborations, 7, 8, 9 companies that are working in real time on real data, no emailing files back and forth, no checking files in and out. Literally, they're getting into a drive letter, just like they would experience if they were sitting in, they are sitting in their office. They're just firing up Workspot first. They fire up Workspot, they go in, they find their project, and they're working in a folder that we give them access to. Nice. You can do that with Panzura in place. You can do it with Microsoft in place. You can even, they're starting to talk about doing that in a data lake or a blob storage of some sort. So the possibilities using Workspot have just expanded what we do. As a matter of fact, I got an email last night. We were going to dinner. I got an email last night saying, hey, I've just been assigned to this project. It was an outside company. This morning, took me about 5 minutes. Set them up, sent the emails, sent all the documentation. Here's how you get in. There you go.
So you just grab a Workspot workstation, deploy it to them, they consume it while they're in there securely working,
Yeah.
super high speed.
Yeah.
Super high speed access to the data within Panzer and so forth
Right.
on the project. And when they're done, click, check out, take
Right.
it away. Right?
So now the big question is, well, what do I have to provide Workspot for everybody? The answer is no. These other companies can bring their own Workspot. Right. And you can connect to the same data because it's all in Azure. You tell them where the Workspot needs to be set up. Our Panzer is in North Central. Our Workspot is in North Central. That's where we set them up, and off they go. And people can just run with it. Man, I've been waiting for this day. I don't want to give away all the secret sauce because we're still doing some of this. Excuse me.
It's your secret weapon, right?
It's one of the things that we're doing right now.
It gives you agility. It gives your.
We have. I'm telling you right now, we've got people that are working in it this morning from other companies working on our Panzera, which Panzera hasn't really been able to do that without a domain trust. Right. I don't want to do a domain trust because that requires someone to sit there and make sure everything is working right. I don't want to get into that. Right. So let's talk about how we can do it.
And do it another way. And here, this diagram that you guys see is another way, which is effectively, if you take a look at these boxes that are here full of workstations, this is effectively separate domains in here, or separate companies that are coming in and functionally working away. And you can set it up however you like, but functionally it's set up so that they can actually license all their own Windows 10 images for their company, design company, and all their applications are licensed for their design company. And then again, these folks for their engineering company and these folks for their construction company. Their users are coming in and accessing these workstations in here. Again, their own licenses for really everything. Those are all separate and secure, and yet they all have access to this common data environment that's down below. Okay, you set it up so that they can actually get in and access the files they need to work on the project. And you can get it all the way out to the end here where it's client handover in the end. The project's done. The files have to exist for many, many years, right? You might have to have a workstation that's in there, a virtual workstation that's in there also set up so that they could actually come in at any time and access and reference the documents and maybe update them if there's been some modifications made and so forth. And so away you go. So rather than the old world of physically dropping in actual workstations or additional laptops, you know, people walking around with 3 laptops or something, right? It's like, why? No, it's virtual. And so now it's a matter of assigning and giving the right permissions and doing this on a project basis. Project grows, expands, the project is finished, it contracts, it gets shut down, and another one spins up somewhere else.
Yeah, we've got, I mean, one of the partners we work with has multiple, they're a very large company worldwide. And so they've got people working from all over as well. So you really don't have to worry about infrastructure. We don't have a network admin or a systems admin that's overseeing this whole thing and putting, 8-10 hours a week into making this run.
Yeah.
It's me. I'm the worst guy in my organization. Man, if they had to fire the guy who knew the least about IT, it would be me. And I'm literally setting this up. So I'm telling you, man, it's been something that's been pretty amazing. People will, if they want to do this, they'll have to think through how they can best set it up. But Workspot opens the door. Yeah. Workspot is there, and that's the piece. That's been the missing piece all along.
And our comment earlier, Todd Erickson just chimed in and said agreed, to define the question a little differently, a little broader. The term joint venture might mean something to someone, something else to someone else. Yeah. So the fact that it's considered creating a separate LLC, exactly, and then he would be doing more than that, because that's what happens in many cases here. Yeah. People will create a new company with a new domain, right? And then they'll have folks log into that domain and they'll work on those workstations and then they're cranking away. And so it is a separate sort of entity company.
Yeah. Integrated project delivery.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So we have customers that are doing that. There's a number of ways to do it and realize that it can be done, and that's the way you should be doing it going forward.